Okay, so good afternoon, good evening, everyone, actually. My name's Dr. Ramiya from My Menopause Centre. So today we're going to speak about the menopause, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak about the menopause today and the impact that this can have on women. Through this session, I hope that you will have an understanding of two key things. The first thing is what the menopause is, what the symptoms are, and what the range of treatment options are which are available. Secondly, why it's important to speak about the menopause and why we should be having these conversations at home and at work. Okay, so just a word on language before we go on. Throughout the session, we sometimes use the terms woman, female, her, but we want to just be clear that our sessions are fully inclusive of everyone. So anyone who's experiencing menopause or going through menopausal changes due to hormonal changes, for example, trans men or some non-binary people. Fantastic. So at My Menopause Centre, we are really passionate about demystifying the menopause, because we believe that it can make such a huge difference to people's lives, to women's lives. So whether that's at work or in their home life or in their relationships, demystifying the menopause can really help women to thrive in their life. So over the next few slides, what I'm going to do is speak about the data behind how much of an impact menopause can have on women. And then we'll speak about what the menopause is. So why does speaking about the menopause matter? Why is it important? Well, for the vast majority of women, they go through a natural menopause. There are other types of menopause we will touch on in a moment, but the vast majority of women go through a natural change. So data here, you can see around 15.5 million women in the UK today are going through some stage of the menopause. That is a huge proportion of women, around 46% of all women. And yet there's still so much stigma associated with the menopause. And the consequence of that is that in research conducted for us last year by Britain Thinks, just 1 in 4 women interviewed felt prepared for the menopause. And in that same research, 5 in 10 women underestimated the physical and the emotional symptoms associated with the menopause. So in further research by the British Menopause Society, half of women felt that the menopause had a negative impact on their home life. Half felt that it had a negative impact on their sex life. 4 in 10 women felt that the menopause had a negative impact on their work life. And finally, 3 out of 10 women felt that the menopause negatively impacted their social life. So that means they were less likely to go out, less likely to make friends and socialize. So clearly you can see that the menopause is not just symptoms, it can affect every aspect of a woman's life. But it really doesn't have to be this way. Knowledge really is power. So in the same research that was conducted for us last year, you can see here that the blue bar represents the women who were prepared for the menopause, and the orange bar represents the women who were not prepared for the menopause. And so you can clearly see the women who were prepared felt more positive about this change and were better able to cope. So just having the knowledge can actually in itself support you through the menopause. And why is this important? Well, women are living longer than ever before now. So 100 years ago, the average life expectancy of a woman was around 77 years. Now women are living longer, so around 89 years on average. 89 years. And the menopause is occurring slightly earlier. So nowadays, on average, a woman is spending up to 40% of her life in the post-menopause. So this is a time when she might be wanting quality of life, when she might be wanting to focus on her own health, on her own life. It's a huge proportion of her own life. Okay, so now that we've seen the impact that menopause can have on women, just want to have a little chat with you about what the menopause is. Okay, so menopause literally means the end of the monthly cycles. This is derived from the Greek word men, which means month, and pausis, which means pause. So the end of the monthly cycles. And we like to think of it as occurring in 3 stages. So this slide is a little bit busy, and I'll try and break it down for you. So the orange line represents the estrogen hormone. This is the main sex hormone in the female body, and it's produced by the ovaries. The blue line represents the progesterone hormone. Now this is again produced by the ovaries in readiness for an anticipated pregnancy. And then if that doesn't happen, then the purple squares represent the periods. So you can see that from puberty up until the perimenopause, the hormones are going up and down in a very rhythmical fashion. This is tightly controlled by a tight feedback mechanism in the body, so that in most women, you will get regular periods in those years. And then we hit the first stage of menopause. So the ovaries are then running out of eggs, and as a result, the estrogen level is erratic. It's up and down, there's no rhythm, there is no pattern. And that's when you might start seeing symptoms because of the erratic nature of the estrogen, and because of the deep troughs, the estrogen goes down quite low, and you might start feeling symptoms in those years. And that can start anywhere sort of from the mid to the late 40s. Okay. You'll also notice that the periods could also become irregular at this stage. And then the menopause is when you are 12 months since your last period. That's when we say you have gone through the menopause. So that can occur anywhere between 45 and 55 years of age. The average in the UK is 51. And that's when your ovaries have run out of eggs and your estrogen level has dropped. And then you go into the postmenopausal years, which is the 3rd stage, and that's where your estrogen levels are low and they stay low for the rest of your life. So on average, the perimenopause can go on, so that's the 1st stage, it can go on for 5 to 10 years. And then the symptoms can go on into the postmenopause as we're getting used to the new norm of low estrogen levels in the woman's body. So that is what happens in a natural menopause, which affects most women, but we touched on earlier how there can be other types of menopause. So one of the types of menopause is premature ovarian insufficiency or premature menopause. And this is where your periods stop under the age of 40. It affects around 1% of women, and obviously it can give you physical symptoms, psychological symptoms, but also these women are young, so it can have huge effects on fertility. It can be devastating if they haven't yet finished their family. The treatment for this type of menopause is by and large hormone replacement therapy. So this helps to treat the symptoms, but is also really important to reduce the risk of the long-term health complications, which we will speak about in a moment. The earlier you go through the menopause, the more risk of having these long-term health problems. The early menopause, which is the second one here, is where you go through the menopause slightly earlier than usual, between the ages of 40 and 45. So that affects around 5% of women. And then you've got surgical menopause. A surgical menopause is basically where your ovaries have been physically removed due to various medical conditions, and as a result the hormones drop really suddenly, and these women often end up with a more severe menopause. And then there's the medical menopause, which is where, due to various medications like chemotherapy, radiotherapy, or various medical conditions, you can end up shutting down the ovaries and as a result going into menopause. So both surgical menopause and medical menopause can happen at any age. Okay, so let's speak a little bit now about what the symptoms could be. So around 8 in 10 women, so that's the majority of women, will have some form of symptom. Most women on average have around 7 symptoms, although not necessarily at the same time. And more than 3/4 of women report at least one of their symptoms being severe. And symptoms can last anywhere between 4 and 8 years on average, although it's not uncommon for symptoms to go on for longer than this, so up to more than 15 years. So what are the symptoms then? Let's talk about that now. Usually when we think about the menopause, we might think about the hot flushes and night sweats. And actually, that's the commonest symptom. So 8 out of 10 women will suffer with these symptoms. But I hope that through showing you this slide, I can show you that actually the menopause can affect every system in the body. So you can get changes, so you can get physical changes, so changes to your periods, changes to your fertility. Women going through the menopause often put on a little bit of weight every year, and due to changes in metabolism and hormones, you tend to put more weight on around your tummy. You end up more with sleep problems, tiredness. You can get bladder symptoms, so sometimes you'll get overactive bladder symptoms. You're more likely to get waterwork infections. It might then affect your musculoskeletal system, so you might get joint pains, muscle aches. You can get a range of other symptoms, so heart palpitations. Migraines can become more pronounced. Itchy, dry skin, hair thinning, dry eyes, dry mouth. Lots and lots of symptoms, okay? It can also affect sex. So your hormones dropping down make you less likely to want to have sex, but also there can be changes down below to the skin of the vulva and the vagina, so it becomes more dry. And because of that dryness, you can get soreness, itching, burning, and that can then affect your sex drive as well. Now, the other set of symptoms are the psychological symptoms. And from my experience through treating menopausal women, the biggest one I found is the anxiety can be really crippling. You can feel low in mood, you can have a low or lack of motivation. You can get changes to your cognition where you feel like your head is full of cotton wool, you're forgetting a lot, poor memory, difficulty concentrating or finding your words. And then this all has a knock-on effect on your confidence and your self-esteem. So what we found is that the 5 main symptoms that affect women at work are mostly the sort of psychological symptoms. So the 5 main ones are difficulty concentrating, being forgetful, feeling low or lacking in confidence and self-esteem, and then the fatigue as well. These are the main ones that affect women going through the menopause at work. So earlier on, we touched about the long-term health consequences of the menopause. So this slide just goes through that in a bit more detail. So we know that the menopause is not just symptoms. There's good data to suggest that the lack of estrogen has some significance towards long-term health problems. So if we take heart disease, for instance, as the first one we speak about, we know that estrogen is very protective towards the arteries, the vessels and the heart. And as the estrogen levels drop, you're more likely to have heart attacks or heart disease. So it's really important throughout the menopausal transition and beyond to also try and manage the other risk factors. So that would be things like your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your lifestyle, to try and minimize this risk because we know that heart disease does increase after the menopause. The lack of estrogen can also affect your bones. So low estrogen levels can contribute towards this condition called osteoporosis, which is thin bones that are more likely to break with small trips, small bumps. And we know that this condition, osteoporosis, contributes towards pain, towards disability, towards a poor quality of life. And so again, in trying to reduce this risk, weight-bearing exercise is really important. So things like walking, running, in addition to sort of good nutrition. Now, the other thing is we touched on vaginal dryness earlier on, and we know that the lack of estrogen causes that. But the longer that it's left untreated, the more damage that can occur down below to the vulva and to the vagina. And then the other one is the risk of dementia. Now, there is some conflicting evidence about this one, but we do know that the earlier you go through a menopause, particularly a premature menopause, there's a higher risk of developing dementia later on in life. So clearly we can see that the menopause presents in so many different ways. It affects women in different ways. So how can we take control here? How can we help? What are the options available? The first thing is that knowledge is power. You saw earlier on that just being prepared for the menopause can help to support you getting through it. But clearly what might suit one woman may not suit another. And so it's very much a case of knowing what's out there and picking the right choice for you. So here are the range of options. It goes without saying, and it's going to be no surprise to say that lifestyle changes like stopping smoking, reducing alcohol, exercising and weight management, these are all really important, not just for symptoms, but also to reduce the long-term health complications of heart disease, thin bones, and even reducing your risk of breast cancer. So in particular within lifestyle, reducing alcohol and caffeine, so tea, coffee, any caffeinated drinks, can really help with symptoms of hot flush as well, and anxiety and sleep. Within the mental well-being option, I think this one is really, really important. So things like engaging in mindfulness, in talk therapies, in meditation can really help you get through those symptoms. But in particular, speaking to other people. So speaking to your spouse, speaking to your family, speaking to those at work, sharing your experiences can really help you feel supported, and just to help other people understand what it is you're going through. So if you needed some information or resources that you wanted to share, we've got plenty of resources on mymenopausecentre.com that you can share with others to help them understand what you're going through. And I think that really helps them to support you. So within the alternative therapies, things like yoga, Tai Chi, acupuncture can help a lot of women, although we don't have a lot of evidence and data behind it, but it can help a lot of women from what they tell us. There's also some herbal therapies as well. So these are herbal remedies that you can buy from the chemist. So that can include things like turmeric, starflower oil, black cohosh, red clover, St. John's wort. There's lots of them that you could potentially look at buying. However, just a word of caution on them is that because they are herbal remedies, they are not always regulated, so sometimes the safety of the preparation is in doubt. And the second thing is that they can interact with a lot of medications that are prescribable, so for instance the contraceptive pill, anti-epileptic medication. So if you want to go for herbal remedies, please do speak with your healthcare professional first to make sure that it's safe for you. The other option is there are medications which are non-hormonal that can be prescribed. So these would include things like antidepressants, various painkillers like gabapentin, pregabalin, and there are various other ones as well. These can help to take the edge off the menopause, and there's something that your healthcare professional can prescribe. And then, of course, the other option is hormone replacement therapy, which is HRT for short. By and large, most women will benefit most from this option. But of course, HRT may not feel like the right option for everyone, or you may have been told that you can't have HRT, in which case you can see that there are still quite a lot of options still available. Okay, so on this slide we'll just speak a little bit about HRT or hormone replacement therapy. It is the most effective way of treating symptoms because clearly the menopause is due to a lack of hormones. So we are just then replacing the hormones that your body is lacking, and that's why it's the most effective treatment. So there are three main hormones. There's estrogen, which helps to control the symptoms. Now, I've got a few products that I can show you here. So you can have that in the form of a gel, which is a pump, and you basically just rub that into your arm or your thigh. You can have that as a spray, which you spray onto your forearm, and these two are used daily. Or you can have a patch. Now they come in different sizes, but this one, is quite a small one, but they can come as a patch and you change that either once or twice a week. And you apply the patches to your buttocks or your thighs. Okay, so these three options, gel, spray or patch, these are called the transdermal options. So that's delivering the estrogen through your skin. Another option of having estrogen is as a tablet. Now, if you've had your womb removed, if you've had a hysterectomy, then most women just need estrogen by itself, and that helps to control symptoms. But if you've still got a womb, it's really important to take a second hormone, which is the progesterone. Okay? And this progesterone just helps to keep the lining of the womb thin to prevent it from getting thick with the estrogen, essentially. So you can have this progesterone mixed in with the estrogen in a tablet. You can have it mixed in with the estrogen in a patch. You can have it separately, and you may have come across body identical progesterone. So this is a capsule that you take separately at night, and you can also have it, the progesterone, in the form of a coil. Now this is the Mirena coil, and I bought it just to show you how small it is. So it goes in straight, and that goes into your womb. So it sits, I'll just show you this. So it sits in your womb, not as scary as it looks. So it lasts for 5 years. It gives you contraception as well. Okay, so in case you need contraception, this will do that. And it also thins the lining of your womb and provides the progesterone arm of the HRT if you still have a womb. Okay, so the other hormone you might see is the vaginal estrogen. So for the vaginal dryness that we spoke about earlier on, you can get vaginal estrogens that can come as a cream, it can come as a pessary or as a ring. And then some women also have testosterone, and this is just one of the types of testosterone we've got. They're all off license, unfortunately, in the UK. They're all gels, however, and they are used in women who have a low sex drive or poor libido. So whenever we talk about HRT, I've always come across a lot of women worried about having various anxieties with hormone replacement therapy. And so this slide, I'm hoping we can just go through a few myth busting just to show you that actually HRT is a lot safer than most women think. So the first one, HRT causes breast cancer. Well, actually, the breast cancer risk is very, very small. The risk of breast cancer from being overweight or from drinking 2 units or more of alcohol a day, so that's a good glass of wine or a pint of beer, the risk of breast cancer from those lifestyle choices is much higher than HRT ever would give you. Nowadays, we've also got body identical HRT, which carries an even lower risk, so the risk is really quite small. The second thing is that a lot of women feel that HRT causes blood clots. Well, actually, the ones I spoke about before, so the gel, the spray, and the patch, these are all the transdermal options. If you use these, you deliver the estrogen through the skin, then actually there's no increased risk of blood clots above your baseline. Estrogen tablets do carry a small increased risk, but these versions through the skin do not. That gets rid of one worry. Another worry is that HRT causes weight gain. Well, actually, we haven't got a lot of evidence to support that. Some women are worried that HRT will just delay the menopausal symptoms till later. But actually, if you were to stop taking HRT, and if you get symptoms at that point, you were going to get those symptoms at that point, regardless of whether you had HRT or not. So HRT does not delay your menopausal symptoms till later. It just helps you get through them. There's also a worry that there's a possible limit to how long a woman can take HRT. Well, the British Menopause Society guidelines are very clear. There is no upper age limit to HRT. So as long as the benefits outweigh the risks and that discussion is had every year, you can potentially take HRT for as long as you need it and as long as you want. The final point is that some women feel that the herbal remedies might be safer, might be better. But actually, we've just spoken about how they can be unregulated and how they can interact with a lot of prescribable medicines. And so actually, HRT may not be as unsafe as a lot of women may think. Okay, so we've spoken about what the menopause is, what the symptoms are, and how to take control of those symptoms. Let's just take a brief moment just to talk about how to take control of the menopause at work. So around 4.5 million women aged 50 to 64 are currently in the UK workforce at the moment. And the vast majority of menopausal women are within this age bracket. So that's a huge number of women that are currently working. Many of these women are in senior roles, they're very experienced, they are role models to the younger workers, they're at the peak of their career. And yet they might be really struggling with some menopausal symptoms. So menopause can really impact on engagement, performance, and attendance in the workplace. So we've got data to show that around 3.3 days of work are missed each year due to menopausal symptoms. If you add that all together, that's around 14 million working days that are lost every year from women that are suffering with menopausal symptoms at work. That's a huge loss to the economy, a huge loss in productivity. Menopausal women tend to report work-related stress, and around 10% of women have left their jobs across the UK. And that's because of menopause. So again, a huge proportion of women. Others have reduced their working hours, they haven't put themselves forward for promotion, they've had to change their jobs or their hours just to make it work. It really doesn't have to be this way. There's so many things that we can think about to try and help to support these women at work. So, developing a menopausal policy, raising awareness, sharing facts and information that can help to allow people to understand what you're going through, but more importantly, normalizing the conversation. So having those conversations at work, helping other people to understand what you're going through, that's really important. And we spoke about that earlier on as well. Training managers and support teams is essential because they are the people who can implement the workplace adjustments. And then thirdly, tailoring the support for each woman. So although every woman is different, every job is also different. So working, for instance, in an office is different to working in a factory. So making reasonable adjustments depending on the work and that woman. So for instance, flexible working hours or access to cold drinking water or a fan next to your desk, or just access to coaching and mental health support services can be really helpful to try and retain these women at work and prevent the loss to them and to productivity and to the economy. That brings me towards the end of my presentation. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you found it helpful and enjoyable.